Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We'll wait a couple of minutes to see if anyone else joins us tonight. But perhaps while we're waiting, I will read to you, since we're doing Metta tonight, once in a while I like to read from one of the suttas, or actually we'll read from two of the suttas tonight. The first one I'll read to you before we practice is talks about the benefits of practicing metta. And I believe I've mentioned before the story of how the practice of metta arose, being a practice that the historical Buddha Shakyamuni recommended as the antidote of fear. But let me read a little bit about the benefits of practicing metta according to the Buddha. People who practice metta sleep peacefully. They wake peacefully. They dream peaceful dreams. People love them. Devas love them. Devas will protect them. Poisons and weapons and fire cannot harm them. Their faces are clear. Their minds are serene. They die unconfused. And when they die, they are born in the Brahma realms. So those are some of the benefits of metta according to the Buddha. But of course, the real benefit is what you yourself experience in doing this practice. So let's go ahead and begin tonight our meditation. So go ahead and find a comfortable way to be. Upright and relaxed. Just allowing the breath to happen. Getting out of the way, as it were, of our breathing. Not trying to alter it or control it in any way. Without any effort, it will gradually slow and deepen on its own. We don't have to do anything, but allow it to happen. So as we begin our meditation, letting go of all that has passed, letting go of any expectation or anticipation of what is to come, and dwelling right here and now in this present moment. May I be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. Gently repeating these words to ourselves, feeling the meaning of the words. May I be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. allowing the ripples of our intentions to travel outwards in ever widening circles to loved ones, neutral beings, enemies, and all beings. May I and all beings be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May I and all beings be safe. May I be healthy in mind, heart, and body. May I be healthy in mind, heart, and body. May I and all beings be healthy in mind, heart, and body. May I and all beings be healthy. May I be happy and content with this life just as it is. May I be happy and content, grateful for this life. May I and all beings be happy and content. Happy and content. May I be peaceful and at ease with a quiet mind and an open heart. May I be peaceful and at ease with a quiet mind and an open heart. May I and all beings be peaceful and at ease. Peaceful and at ease. So I shared with you before we began the benefits of metta from one of the sutras. But I'd like to share with you the sutra where this practice came from. This is the source of what we do and how we do it and why we do it. This is from the Pali Canon, the Samyutta Nikaya. It's called the Karaniya Metta Sutta. They're basically the Buddha's words on loving kindness. It goes, "This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and one who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness through the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So that is what's commonly known as the Metta Sutta, the Buddha's words on loving kindness. So, having practiced this practice And having heard these words, how are you? That good.
Hey, Jeffrey, I have a question.
Yes, Joe.
Oh, first, how I am after that practice is I feel lovely. It's just really lovely, and the reading was really wonderful. Um, a question came to me from what you said a couple weeks ago, but this is a good place, I think, to bring it up. You were talking about that if you're present with someone who is suffering and you are calm, then the mirror neurons help them self-regulate. I was wondering, in light of what's happening in the world today, if we do practices like this, is there a good explanation? Well, does it really affect, places of deep suffering? And if so, is there an explanation like mirror neurons that it would be a bigger picture that you understand or could suggest?
You mean on a more collective level?
Yeah.
Mm. It's a wonderful question, and it makes a great deal of sense. You know, they research has shown sort of what uh, they think is happening in our own nervous systems. You know, first of all, one important understanding I think that's relevant here is that we're not just um, sort of individual nervous systems sort of walking around and interacting with one another. That's an old kind of conception of how we are. But in fact, interpersonal neurobiology, what we might call that study now, that field, understands the what we call the nervous system very differently, which is it extends out at least as far as all of our senses extend out. So it goes well beyond the confines of our skin, right? And this body, this container. And so that's for me really key to understanding what might be happening. So that's the research, and knowing about that research is helpful on some level, on an intellectual level, to kind of um, help me understand what might be happening. But it's for me equally, if not more important, to try and understand my own experience when, for example, I offer something that might be considered compassion, right? I maybe I help somebody, or I try to help somebody, and being very attentive, because I've learned to be through this practice attentive to the granular details of my experience over time. What is happening in me? And really, for me, in my own experience, it feels like what they're describing as that arc that I've talked about before, of recognizing the suffering of one another, and then having recognized that and having a felt sense of that in my own body, then feeling moved to respond if I can. So So I really, as the Buddha suggested, I look to my own experience to help me understand, right? So that's another really important sort of way to understand what might be happening in terms of, and we can talk intellectually about mirror neurons and self-regulating, and those are concepts, really. Those are ideas. They're attempting to describe what might be happening. But that's different than the experience of what's actually happening. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say, and what I would encourage all of us to really develop and rely on is perceiving and understanding what might be happening within ourselves. And then, taken from a different perspective, what it is like to experience being helped. So understanding it from sort of one perspective, and then understanding it from kind of like a different direction. And what is that like? What is it like to be in the presence of others who are calm and open-hearted? What is that like? All of you have had that experience, and I would, tonight, for example, you just had it. So, I would invite you to reflect on what that is like. What is that like to be around people who are calm, people who are open-hearted, or, and you can insert any sort of state of mind. What is it like to be around someone who is anxious or angry or sad? What is it like to be around someone who is blissful, right? So I don't know that I can answer the question you were asking, Joe, but in terms of thinking about this question and finding an answer for yourself, that's how I might suggest you could go about it, if that makes sense, of answering that question.
Thank you.
So, no easy answer. Sorry. I mean, there is some more abstract, esoteric teachings about this, about different kinds of consciousness. And there is a fundamental ground consciousness called the alaya, or earth store consciousness, where the seeds of karma are stored, what Jung might have called the collective unconscious. So there are some esoteric teachings, and they're really interesting, but they're not particularly helpful. I haven't found them, as interesting as they are, I haven't found them particularly helpful for my own practice, because my own practice comes from practice and working with my own experience. That's really the root of it. And these ideas and theories and things like that can be helpful, but it really always comes down to experience, because if nothing else, Buddhism is radically empirical. It's about lived experience. So thank you for that wonderful question, Joe. And I see Kent or CJ has their hand up.
Thank you. Just elaborating on that, and I don't want to tell too many stories out of school for CJ, but before COVID, I don't know if you're familiar with the singer Diva Pamal. She and her husband, I believe, they traveled the world doing chanting. chanting and so on. So you can, and they've been to the Rio Theatre. They used to come every year to the Rio Theatre in Santa Cruz. So if you've been there in that group of what, several hundred, 500 people, just the place is full, CJ could spend hours there in that energy and not have a problem. And yet she has trouble going to a mall. She just objects to going to a mall and being around people that are not like that. So I guess it also brings up the question of mob consciousness as well. When people act out as part of a mob, despite their own unwillingness to do so, that they get caught up in that consciousness of all those people and that energy, and they do things despite them saying, no, I don't want to do it. They end up doing it anyway. So I just find that interesting that CJ finds that in that group and just has this can't be around people for a lot of the time. Thank you, Jeffrey.
A couple of things come to mind in hearing you say that. One is I've certainly felt, as being part of a larger group, that collective energy, if you will. And when it's really from a psychological perspective, again, Jung described this many different places in his writings, but being caught up in that archetypal energy, which absolutely an individual gets lost in because it's so much greater than them and so much more powerful. One thing about this practice, which I've mentioned at various times, but I hope you gain a greater understanding of the more that you practice, is that when you can become aware of your own experience as it's happening and not get caught up in it, right? To become that observer of it rather than identifying with all of the content of our experience, whether it's thoughts or feelings or sensations in the body. When you can learn to do that on a regular basis, you can be grounded, if you will, to borrow that term, in even in the midst of these strong collective states of mind or energies. So this practice really can help with that, to not get carried away, if you will, right? And so that's something to consider about this practice, a real benefit of it. When we're reaching out to somebody who is suffering greatly, right? When we're just present with them, we can be aware of our own experience, be aware of their experience, and still maintain a groundedness in that. So when I was learning to be a therapist, right, in therapy school, in my clinical program, a teacher made a comment once. She said, it doesn't help to have two people overwhelmed. It doesn't help to have two people drowning, right? If one of our intentions is to try and be helpful to somebody, right? So it's absolutely crucial that we, to put it in those sort of psychological therapeutic terms, to maintain those healthy boundaries, which is a natural sort of outcome of this practice. So it's a wonderful aspect of this practice. So that's one thing that came to mind. The other is, it's great when we're in positive, open-hearted energy, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Let's relish that and appreciate that and enjoy that. But nothing in this life, in this world lasts. So, if we're trying to hold on to that, or we have a preference for that, it's not going to be very long before we're disappointed and we're going to be suffering again, because life just isn't that way. Life is all of it. And so if we can appreciate those wonderful times in life as they're happening, or hopefully not too far after the fact, that's great. That's wonderful. Yes, let's continue to do that. But when the rest of it comes up, the this neutral stuff or the painful stuff, it's absolutely possible to appreciate that as well. Appreciate and know that it won't last, because nothing does. Nothing does. So to try and let go of the grasping of the pleasant and the aversion of the unpleasant is what I'm trying to say. That's really the nature of the middle way. So that's a very rich area of practice for all of us, for any of us, is kind of walking that tightrope of the middle way, because it's so dynamic. We're always having to shift and respond to life, hopefully through this practice more and more skillfully over time, but not always. Because I'm very reticent of the notion of perfection. I think it's quite dangerous, that idea. But I do absolutely believe in practicing and becoming more and more skillful, practice and become more and more wise, so that we can find that middle way, between the extremes, find that middle way between grasping and aversion. Because once we start grasping, or once we start pushing away, that's not going to get us anywhere. It's only going to bring suffering. So to try and avoid that in the first place, that is the middle way.
I'll keep that in mind when I go to Las Vegas tomorrow.
Yes, that's a good place to keep it in mind.
Yeah, a little bit of distraction and noise.
The way is not difficult for those without preference. That's how it begins. Nina, yes.
Last week you asked us to think about what guides us.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about that this week. And the Zazen sitting is really important to me right now. I find that it's always challenging, and I can always bring curiosity and openness to the experience. And I'm always learning something new about that experience. And in reading the ancient teachers, they all say you have to sit. And they say no expectations, no rewards.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing in it that you can be guaranteed of, but you have to do it.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you for that question.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your deep reflection and your practice. Rhoda, yes.
I don't have a little hand. I don't have the. No, I have just a real one. Two
Real,
of them.
yes, good.
This book that Tyson gave me, I don't think we read much. He might have read out of, called Existence by David Hinton.
Mm.
Another kind of psychological, some artwork in it. But he stressed that we're all of one tissue. Speaking of how it reaches out to everyone,
Mm-hmm.
staying within the boundaries of ourself. And it's quite a, it's like a puzzle almost. We have to be with ourselves and start. This is where we do everything. We start here. But I guess I haven't finished that book. It's sitting with some other books that I haven't quite finished. Thich Nhat Hanh and the idea of affecting other people, but we're starting with ourselves. That's what you emphasized tonight. But it's not the first time. This is right. And to think about how we feel about the practice. I have had such trouble in the mornings just trying to sit and be and like my talk about monkey mind. I mean, it's all over the place. So I've got to solve that. I don't know. I mean, I've gone through some things lately and it pops into my head and, trying to go to an empty place that I have to, visually and not jump around and, thoughts. It's I mean, I know some psychology just from reading many books and, studying it, but I think I agree with you that it's like, would you use the word esoteric? It's like,
Yeah. There's in practicing metta, there is a, the way that I guide you, right? We start with ourselves and then we go sort of open up into include more and more beings. But even that distinction is artificial, right? That's just an intellectual distinction. That there's to think of ourselves as individuals, especially in this culture where we worship the rugged individual. It's just a habit to think that way. And part of what this practice can do is to loosen that up a little bit. Part of why I encourage you to have a felt sense of the intention that we're working with is that transcends beings, that transcends beings. And so you can sort of melt into, everythingness or emptiness through this practice. Over time, you can have a felt experience where, that I mentioned Dogen's saying where body and mind drop off, right? Usually talking about shikantaza, not about metta. Certainly wasn't talking about metta, but you can have that and will and do have that experience practicing metta over time. Is where the sense of individual just drops away, it melts away, and you suddenly are the collective. You suddenly are all beings. Where ego is just, it's gone somewhere. It's not there. And we exist in what I would call a more natural state, closer to our original faith, to borrow the Zen term. Thich Nhat Hanh called it interbeing. Right? We're not these sort of monads sort of bumping up against one another. We're always already intertwined and interbeing. It's a wonderful, wonderful way to express it. I really enjoy and appreciate the way that he talked about it. because it fits my experience. You know, when I am practicing massage, there's an energetic connectedness where individualness disappears, and now we're collective, working towards a common intention of health. You know. Anyone else? So maybe one way to approach this or think about this, and going back to Joe's question, is that because our nature is interbeing, that is how we affect the world, by beginning here. Because we're already absolutely interconnected with all of existence already. And this practice, like many others, though, can give us an opportunity to experience that more directly. Well, thank you all for your effort and your intention and the opportunity to practice together. And I just want to thank you all for your generosity and your dana throughout the year, that has helped us to exist and hopefully reach more and more people. So thank you, because we wouldn't exist without your generosity, and we certainly wouldn't even be here without your practice. So thank you all so much. And I will look forward to, oh, wait a minute, next week, let me think about that for a second. Next week, we actually will not meet next week, because some of us will be in the midst of Rohatsu Sesshin. So I will be there practicing with our fellow Sangha, the Phoenix Heart lineage. We'll be practicing at the Quaker Center in Ben Lomond, is where the sesshin will happen. What a wonderful place for that to happen. So I'm greatly looking forward to that, but we will not meet next week. So just want you to know that, but in 2 weeks, we will be back to our regularly scheduled program.
Can I send good wishes for your Shuso ceremony?
Thank you so much. Yes, that is occurring Saturday morning. I think the schedule said about 10 a.m. And if it's sort of broadcast and recorded, I'll send that information out if you want to participate, if you're not local and would like to participate. I'm not exactly sure if that's happening or not, because I'm not involved in those arrangements. But if it is broadcast, I will send that information out if you'd like to participate. But thank you, Nina. Thank you for your good wishes.
And Jeffrey, in 2 weeks' time, we are we're going on vacation, so we may not be attending on the second Wednesday.
All right. Well, safe travels.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
night.
everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night and take care.
Good night.